I think, I'm very biased in this respect, but I think today is a good example of the way that a university can interact with the community by serving as a hub, bringing people together that have the same interests to expound, to network with each other and move forward. Nobody understands this better than the next person who's standing right next to me. Kathy Swain is the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Commercial Development with the University of Texas System, and she's just an all-around great person in general. So I'll turn it over to Kathy.
Well, thank you for that. That's maybe the nicest introduction I've ever had. Hola, buenos tardes. I'm glad some of you are still here, since I'm the only thing, I think, standing between you and margaritas or the weekend or whatever. I'm going to try to whip through some notions that will hopefully be of some interest to you. And as an overview, I want to talk a little bit about what exactly is the university's role in economic development. And for starters, I would have to say that we're sitting here doing it right now. I really agree with you on that, Kyle. Secondly, I want to explain a little bit about what is this magic term technology transfer, which you hear all the time associated with universities. Then I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the world of proof of concept, which goes beyond basic research. I want to digress in the micro level to talk about commercialization as a team sport, which I'm passionate about. Then I want to give you a little context for UT System in the state of Texas. And I'm going to close with a discussion of the future of proof of concept funding, and also what are some national priorities that seem to be showing themselves recently, and finally some challenges that we face. And then if we have time for questions, or if you're interested, hopefully we can do that. What is the university's role in economic development? There's a new buzz out there that's called TRE, Transformational Regional Engagement. And I think your presence here today is little evidence of that. A second role, which is critical, and I don't really mean to make it secondary because it's probably primary, is education and training, which is another thing we're doing today. Also, universities are employers in their regions, and this is a very significant impact that we have. We provide research and innovation. We are the source of ideas. We are major drivers in terms of ideas. We incubate companies. This is a huge activity at UT. And we transfer technology from minds to markets. I can't tell when I'm switching this thing. I did it. Yay. Okay. UT System. What is UT System doing in each of these areas? First of all, in education. UT System overall statewide graduated 42,000 students last year. UT System overall employs about 88,000 people. We spend about $2.2 billion in research annually. It's actually about 2.3 now. In fiscal year 2008, we had 716 invention disclosures from our faculty members, term of art, which I'll be happy to explain. We've got 12 incubators all around the system, including 2 here in the Valley. We mentor approximately 250 companies at any given time. We have a global impact in many, many, many respects. I could give you many examples, including that we have, I am told, you can quote me on the statistics, but I think this is right, that we have 22,000 graduates in South Korea is a good example of our impact around the world. But we also provide soft landings for foreign companies here in some of our incubators, and that's a whole nother topic. What is tech transfer? At UT System, we sign a new license or option agreement deal every other day at UT System. We start a new company every other week, 25 last year. We receive 2 issued patents nearly every week, 99 last year. And we rank 6th in patent strength, which bears some explanation. In 2008, the Association of University Technology Managers, which is the primary source of data on university tech transfer, ranked us 2nd in creation of startups, 3rd in execution of licenses and options, 4th in patents issued, 6th in patents applied, and 13th in license revenue nationally. We're pretty proud of those rankings as a system overall. And now I want to address sort of what is this whole process, this whole notion of technology transfer, commercialization of research. What do we mean by that? Now, I drew this. You can probably tell this, or I created this thing. This didn't come from anywhere else. But it is a circular process getting from the idea to the marketplace. And whoa, wait a minute, what'd I do? I thought you said this middle thing was the pointer. I think you're kidding me here. Oh, nope, no. Okay, I take it back. There we go. Okay, in the middle is technology transfer. Starting over here with research that's funded with federal, state, local, private money. Research results in what we call invention disclosures. When a researcher discovers something, they disclose it to their technology transfer office. Those folks are set up to do licensing and so on. It then gets protected if it's deemed appropriate. That costs money and staff time. From that, licenses, options, products, services result. And those licenses, options, products, and services are either end up in startup companies or with established companies, but hopefully the end result is jobs and wealth, quality of life, and improvement in environment and health. And then the money circles back through the private public sector back into research. So that's the process. And in the middle, as I said, is technology transfer, which really involves invention disclosures, patents, trademarks, license options, startup companies. That's the technology transfer process that you hear about at universities. And if you think back to what I proudly described of the University of Texas system results in terms of patent, license, so on, that's how we get measured by the industry, for better, for worse. You know, we can go there later when I start talking about national priorities. Tech transfer is a culture. There's really a changing culture happening at universities. Universities are becoming more and more entrepreneurial for lots and lots of good reasons. The accountability starts when the questions get asked. And so we're being asked a lot of questions, and people are not waiting for the phone to ring anymore. It starts at the top. At UT, at least, our mission statements, our tenure promotion policies consider commercialization activities and tech transfer activities formally. Contrary to what you may have heard otherwise, that's the fact. That is the reality. We have one of the most generous royalty splits in the country. That's not to say we're the only ones who give a 50-50 split of the royalties from intellectual property to our faculty, but it is the highest, I believe, in the university world. Entrepreneurship training across the disciplines, we do that at all of our academic campuses. You guys do it. This is the second time I've been down here to participate in an event like this, and I know your business schools get involved. You offer this training to students, to faculty, to the community, and we do it in a variety of different formats all over the state. And finally, our culture includes incubating companies, and again, that's a whole nother subject, and mentoring those companies, providing a whole range of services to companies. And I just want to stick in the notion here that the companies that we mentor, I think there's a perception that we mainly mentor companies in which we have an equity interest. That is, we have intellectual property licensed to those companies, or we have a stake or stock in the companies. And this is false. In fact, the number, and this is very rough, not quotable, not documentable, but it's a rough estimate, is more like about 80 to 85% of the companies that we mentor and incubate do not involve university IP, and we have no stake other than they are present in our incubators. And so it's kind of a very different model than what you might expect. And also it's different on each campus. It's different in each incubator. Each incubator really has evolved and developed to address the needs of its community. It's nice that way. It's a very bottom-up thing. We're not centrally managed at UT, and it's still another topic. So now I'm going to digress, and I'm going to ask you a question. I want to know who you think invented the light bulb. Oh, so you think it was Thomas Edison? You sure about that? Okay. Well, actually, the first light bulb was invented by an English scientist named Humphrey Davy about 79 years before Edison figured out how to make it glow up to 1,500 hours with a better filament. And in fact, Edison and his team purchased 2 patents in order to develop the light bulb that we know today and that he is so famous for. So he not only was very good at making incremental inventions out of something that had already been discovered, he was a good businessman and an excellent promoter, since today I think most people think that he's the one who invented the light bulb. My point here is that research goes to a certain point, particularly funded basic fundamental research, and then the money goes away. And in 1800, Humphrey's money went away, and he didn't find that filament. And this still happens today. So the notion of proof of concept has evolved in order to take research beyond its discovery stage to that next step of, proving that it works. Another term of art is proof of principle, you may hear it described. Reduction to practice, prototype development. You may hear the terminology valley of death. And we're not talking about Road the 600 here for those English majors in the group. We're talking about the point at which the research money runs out and there's no more money to fund that proof of concept, or and you're going to catch me later going on beyond that to product development, which is another proof of relevance. Lots of other ways to look at this question. So UT System has addressed this specifically. Actually, we have 5 proof of concept funds around the system, formal funds, and we've spent lots of money, about $30 million over the last 5 years on these types of activities. But in particular, specifically, at UT System, I ran the Texas Ignition Fund, which was a $2 million grant program that was funded 2 years ago. We made our first awards in July of 2008, and the idea was to stimulate commercialization of research at all of the 15 UT System institutions and help bridge the gap between the discovery, that valley of death, between discovery and a marketable product. And the results have been, we've had 5 funding rounds, 123 proposals over that time period of about a year and a half. From 13 of our 15 universities, we've made 45 awards, and when I say that, we're still funding the last round. We still have 2 or 3 that have not yet been funded. 2 awards here at UT Pan American, one for Dr. Lozano in nanofibers, resulting in the creation of Fibrio, which we're so proud of, and another one more in the more recent round to Dr. Lin for 3D photonic crystal phase mask fab project. 18 startups. I had an email from my colleague Mickey Stevenson yesterday to update that number. Is now right now we're collecting data from all of our award winners in order to report to the Board of Regents in May, and that number's up to 19 startups in 18 months with this fund. And our startups, they don't all succeed, and I guess I consider that success, because if they all succeeded, we wouldn't be taking enough risk probably. But university startups do have about a 6 times higher success rate than normal startups for lots of reasons, including mentoring and funding and other things. So now we're going to digress a little bit to talk about how commercialization works. It's a team sport. And you've heard some of that today. I just want to reinforce that a little bit. A brilliant idea is great. It's fantastic, but it's not enough. And if you give some money to a brilliant idea, that's even better. But you now have 2 legs of a multi-legged stool. You can't really sit on it, or if it's wheel, you can't really ride on it. In order to succeed, you're also going to have all these other things. And I think timing has to be, maybe put that at the top of the list. I want to just mention sustainability and scalability. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to put it in your brain. So what do we mean by business skills? I like to ask the question, how many of you have ever run a factory? This is a good crowd. All right. Or signed a contract with a manufacturer. In most of the crowds I sit in, by the way, so you all are unique because most people have never done that. How many of you have ever negotiated with Wall Street and done an IPO? There are lots of things involved in business management: sales, customers, human resources, legal, intellectual property. It's a team sport. I think some of you said that earlier on the panel. I appreciate it. because it's definitely true. And if you think you can do everything, you've got a big shock coming. We try to teach our faculty members that, and we actually created a program that I call Ideas on Fire, which is training for faculty researchers, and we're doing a lot of other things in that area to just encourage people. Do you really want to be a CEO? And I think Karen would have a lot of fun things to say about that. Or do you want to use your skills another way and get value another way? I want to give you some comparisons of the Texas technology transfer commercialization activity to the nation. We rank fourth, we're in the top 10 in all these categories of research expenditures, patents issued, license options executed, startup companies formed, and license revenues received. And these are the numbers statewide as they're reported to Autumn. And again, I'm showing you this because there's a lot of data, a lot of perception that's promoted among politicians and others, and these are the facts. Them's the facts right there. And what about UT? Where do we stand in these state comparisons? Again, the facts from the data reported to the coordinating board, the Higher Education Texas Coordinating Board, we represent about 3/4 of that activity. And again, I will point out, these are the measures that we are measured by, for better or for worse. This is a little bit of statistics on UT system, 15 institutions. A lot of people don't really know what UT system is comprised of. There actually are 6 public university systems in the state of Texas. We are the largest, obviously, and the 15 universities, nearly 200,000 students, nearly $12 billion now in operating budget. And this presentation, by the way, has some links to more detail if you're interested in it. These are the academic universities. You know one of them very well. The health institutions include MD Anderson Cancer Center, Southwestern Medical Center. Some people don't realize that those, and of course Medical Branch and Health Science Center at San Antonio, at Tyler, and at Houston, don't realize that these are actually part of the UT system. And just a brief note, we're not centrally managed at UT system the way California and A&M actually are, and a lot of systems around the country. As a result, we don't report our numbers in the aggregate. The individual institutions report their statistics to Autumn and the coordinating board and other sources. We don't report as a system. So I actually work for you all. You don't work for us. I mean, we're sort of the mothership, but we're more of a resource than we are a regulating kind of body at UT system. So what's our role? Our role in economic development is the university role in economic development is a top priority in Texas. And I want to just describe 3 initiatives in Texas: the Cancer Fund, the Texas Emerging Technology Fund, which many of you hear about, which hasn't been mentioned yet today, really, and proof of concept funding with a question mark that we're hopefully going to see in the future here in Texas. The Texas Emerging Technology Fund is roughly $400 million. It's been allocated in 3 programs. I'm going to start from the bottom. Research Matching Program is the smallest of the 3. This chart really shows you how much UT system has benefited from these 3 programs and what the total investments have been as of the most recent posting, which I think was in July of last year. The website hasn't been really updated, so these numbers are a little delayed. The Research Matching Program is exactly what it sounds like. It keeps getting reduced with the new legislation. Right now, there's about $20 million allocated for research matching, but it's not a priority for the advisory committee, and they have not been funding those type of deals. The commercialization is the most common, the one you hear the most about. Those awards are for companies, pre-seed, companies that have some affiliation with a university partner. And that becomes the question, what exactly does that mean? Is it a university spin-out? Absolutely. Could it be a company that has a relationship with a faculty member sponsoring research with the university? Absolutely. Could it be a company that is housed in an incubator? Yes. And so the relationship with the university, that's why I said in a previous slide that in Texas, universities' involvement in commercialization is a top priority, $400 million worth. they've funded at this point over 125 companies. I'm pretty sure about that number. Fernando was here earlier. Are you still here? I don't see you. Fernando Gonzalez is the head of the Regional Center for Innovation and Commercialization that vets the deals and actually sends the deals to Austin for the Rio Grande Valley. The third program is the Research Superiority Program, which UT Pan American has been a recent beneficiary with respect to the Rapid Response Manufacturing Facility. And this program is designed to create centers of excellence at campuses all around the state and identify superior research talent, very focused in particular areas for the universities. So sorry to spend a little time on that, but I thought it might be a program you'd be interested in. These are the 7 regional centers for innovation commercialization, RCICs. The Rio Grande RCIC number 5 is linked on this slide. If any of you want these slides, I'm sure Jackie can get them to you. The Cancer Fund is a $3 billion fund, $300 million a year for 10 years that the state is funding to find a cure for cancer. And obviously, UT system, universities with MD Anderson in particular, and cancer research going on all over the state is very interested in this program. The first fund, and I meant to get the number, and I'm sorry the blank is not filled in on this slide. I think I'm correct, but obviously you can't quote me. I'll have to shoot you. I think we got $60 million out of the first round of awards that were just announced a month or so ago. And then finally, we have submitted a proposal to CPRIT, the Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas, to consider replenishing proof of concept funds to take some of the discoveries that are developed in the basic research on cancer, that next step toward commercialization. We don't have an answer on that yet. That's why there's a question mark there. So what's the future of proof of concept funding? And I have a long list here of possibilities that we are pursuing because our Texas Ignition Fund $2 million fund is spent. Some of our other funds on our campuses have been fully spent. So these are some possible sources for future funding for proof of concept. But what is not on this slide and should be on this slide that really is a notion I want to leave with you all. So if I see you writing, I'll feel very good, like I've done my job. And that is that to go beyond proof of concept to a notion of proof of relevance. I mean, like, who cares if it works if nobody wants it? So this is sort of the new notion that I'm suggesting to anyone that will listen, including in Washington, D.C. last week at some meetings I'll tell you about in a minute. But that definitely is a concept that's catching on with national sources of funding. And if I had had my way with absolutely every TIF award that we made, I would have given at least $5,000 or $10,000 of that award to a market research aspect. And I do think that's what we should be doing. So I'm going to be the dripping faucet on that notion. So help me out here. Anyone that talks to you about POC and proof of concept, remember to stick in there, it needs to be relevant. And, some resources need to be allocated to bringing the market piece to the discussion. So university role in EcoDevo, which is what we call it. I've been affectionately called the EcoDevo Diva. I don't know what the diva part means exactly, but anyway. Is really, really, really a national priority. Clusters are the buzz. And one thing some of you have heard me say a lot in the last couple of days is that, there is no box to think outside of. And I've said that in a few different contexts. Certainly with research superiority, that's the case. But also with clusters, that is the case. I mean, it used to mean something, in urban land economics. And my area of concentration in my ABD PhD was real estate and urban economics. And location analysis and economic base analysis, clusters used to mean something. I mean, you gather a bunch of companies together that all do the same thing. But that's not really what it means anymore, specifically. It can be a vertical cluster also. It can be, a chain. It can be defined in many different ways. So it's really, the notion really is to identify your competitive assets, your competitive advantages, and then, create an environment where those kinds of commercial activities can thrive. And that is exactly what you all are doing here in the Valley. Whoops, I didn't finish there. The Department of Commerce and the National Academy of Sciences, believe it or not, the National Academies of Sciences, with their great big building right down on the mall in Washington, have both created innovation initiatives. And I mean by created, I mean they've staffed them, they fund them. There's a director of innovation at the National Academies of Science. He has a name. He had a conference last week, but it was very small, and I got the privilege of being there with a very diverse audience. And some of these things that I'm telling you about clusters and proof of relevance, proof of concept, these are all things that were discussed, and these are priorities, and they are directly in the sights of the powers that be. And also with the Department of Commerce, they have several immediate upfront priorities, one of which, believe it or not, is education, entrepreneurship education across the disciplines. And it's like, I used to say that when I was an adjunct professor, I would say in business, speaking to liberal arts students, I would say, you think you're a writer? You're in business. You're an artist. Oh, you're in business. We need those skills. We need the business schools involved. We need entrepreneurship training to cross the disciplines. We need to develop teams in order to be innovative. So the clusters, crossing the valley of death, educating in entrepreneurship, those are three themes that I heard across the board in 3 days of meetings last week in D.C. And I also heard a lot of talk from the standpoint of money in terms of what's going to be funding clusters, and I raised my hand and said, don't forget manufacturing. And the response I got was, no, manufacturing clusters are definitely considered clusters. Also, the SBIR, STTR funding, which crosses many, many agencies, as some of you may know, and which has been an incredibly difficult and unfriendly program for universities, at least. Those programs are going to get more money. They are going to expand to proof of concept, hopefully to proof of relevance. And they are asking, every single one of them is asking for input. How can we be more user-friendly? How can we change our policies and our practices so that the more money we're going to get can be usefully spent? So the opportunity to input to the policies on these programs is a wide open door right now. And those becoming experts in attracting that money is going to represent a real opportunity for everybody in this room. The EDA still cares about jobs. They care about you all. I mean, I definitely met some people down there, and I always tell your story everywhere I go. So they got to hear about you all, and they want to hear more. So that door, the EDA door, is open. Of course, we know what they care about. And right now there is legislation pending. It's pending in the House. It's passed the Senate. That's being sponsored. It's being actually promoted and supported by a group called the Association of University Research Parks. The House, but the Senate bill passed. It passed, unfortunately, with a $10 million minimum, which a lot of us recognize is too high. But so we're all going to do it. What is that thing? Anyway, the House bill, which is in process, it needs the support. So ask me if you want to know more about that, and so that you can contact your representatives. Is this too much, too fast? I'm getting down to the end here. 3 minutes? Really? Okay. Okay. So what are some of the challenges? This is a long list, I'll tell you. But at the top here, integrating the disciplines, just say no to silos. That sounds so easy, but boy, is that ever hard. I mean, everybody's got their ego and they've got their little power chain, and it's very, very, very tough to break down those silos. Branding, marketing. 2 years ago, if you'd said to me, where's the beef, I would have said marketing. not waiting for the phone to ring. That's a challenge. Valuation is a huge challenge in commercialization of intellectual property. If I had to pick 2 courses that I could offer in terms of entrepreneurship based on what I've seen and in 40 years of working and way too much experience with this stuff, it would be negotiation skills, number 1, and number 2, it would be 8th grade English, communication skills. Getting researchers to talk on the level of real people. There are lots more. Limited patent budgets. You heard me talk a little bit earlier, mentioned this morning some of the challenges we face with the patent office. And finally, at the bottom is product development, which is to say going beyond proof of concept, even going beyond proof of relevance, I would argue, because it's not the first prototype that goes to market, ever. It's the 10th prototype that goes to market. So, some support, some nurturing that will drive that. Those are some of the challenges that we see. So to kind of wrap up, research commercialization at UT, it's a team sport. It involves research plus a culture and incentives, infrastructure, lots and lots of money has been spent on it, which is the next thing, and collaboration partner. It's all about people, really. Ultimately picking your partners. And in conclusion, I hope that you've seen from all of this that the UT system and the state of Texas are definitely seeding commercialization of research discoveries. By the resources that are being committed are really historic, and they're also compelling statewide. The rest of the country wants to know what the heck is going on in Texas. They don't fly over us anymore. We're definitely on the radar screen. The federal attention is on us, and it's on universities commercializing research. We're hoping that'll be accompanied with some money. And the final point I would make is that we and this was actually made in Washington too, and I really want to leave you with this thought, is that the days of competing with each other, town to town, state to state, region to region, border to border, that is over. That is not how we're going to maintain our competitive advantage in the world. We must start thinking about creating this stuff and making value out of whole cloth. We can't be just taking it from somewhere else. And that's going to mean using more ingenuity with a lot of the things you talked about today, Kimberly, and with what we already have, getting innovation teams to identify and solve problems across disciplines. No more competitive shifts. We've got to actually create wealth, and that's what our country's built on that, and so we got to get back to doing that. That's it. That's our websites. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Kathy.